after she causes all this hullabaloo, yes, the book uses that word. She meets with the president and tries to convince him, but he is just not convinced yet. So she doesn't give up. So the book continues to show all of these things that she does. Everything from making more posters to... Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ciera Teaching Channel. I'm so excited to be sharing today with you some amazing mentor texts, but not just any mentor text. Today we're focusing on mentor texts that are perfect for sharing during Women's History Month. So this book is called Dancing Hands, which, by the way, I think is a beautiful title. And this is a story about, I don't never know what to say, Teresa or Teresa. It's Spanish, so I'm going to say Teresa. Teresa Carreño, and how she played the piano for President Lincoln. She became so much more than just a person who played the piano for a president. But the story kind of stops there. At the very back, there's more information about what happens after that. So definitely make sure when you read this story to your students that you read what goes on after the story too. So anyways, let's jump in. So again, this story is about a little girl named Teresa Carreño. She lived in a country called Venezuela, and she grew up with her mom and her dad loved playing the piano and taught her how to do so. And she became really, really good at it at a very young age. She would even go as far as writing her own songs. But unfortunately, war broke out in her country, which made her and her family flee to the United States, where she, of course, knew no one and had no piano. So she felt very lost, very afraid, as many immigrants do, of course, being in a new place. So also, at this time when she arrived was the time of the Civil War. So she left a war to come to a war. So it was very stressful for her and her family. But she was able to find in her new town a piano that she was able to play. And as she played, people saw, people heard, and just flocked to hear her play. Other musicians would come and play with her, and she found basically her happiness yet again. She became so popular that there were shows actually put out for people to come and see her at the age, I don't know if you can see it here, at 8 years old. So it was pretty amazing. She was very talented for a very young girl. So she traveled all around to different cities. By the time she was 10, she was so famous that she was receiving invitations from all over the country to play for people. And then she got one very special invitation, which of course was from President Lincoln. So again, this was at the time of the Civil War. It was still kind of going on. So she gets to the White House and she is very nervous, of course, because this is a very, prestigious person to play for. But she's more nervous about what kind of song to play for him because, as you can see, President Lincoln over here in the corner in the window, he is very distraught, very stressed about the war that's happening. So she didn't know what to play. So when she gets inside, she meets Abraham Lincoln, and then she decides to play a song that she wrote called Listen to the Mockingbird. So she plays the song for Abraham Lincoln. Of course, he absolutely loves it. It ended, and that's basically where the story ends, which I kind of hate, but the story is beautiful all at the same time. But it says, from then on, Teresa felt certain that she would always be bold enough to share her musical courage anywhere in the world, simply by letting her fingers travel across the beautiful dark and light moments of hope. My favorite page right there. So then, again, like I said, when the story is over, down here is the historical note where you can read a lot more about her. She ends up becoming a composer, an opera singer, traveling all around, very globally known. So she's, definitely a woman to learn about and to strive to be. So if you don't have this one in your library, make sure to grab it. Again, it's called Dancing Hands, and it is by Margarita Engel and Rafael Lopez. So make sure to check that one out. All right, so another book, and this one I know all of your students will love because Who doesn't love dinosaurs? So, Dinosaur Lady. This is an amazing story about Mary Anning, and she was the very first paleontologist. The thing that surprised me about this book was the fact that when she was alive and finding all these discoveries, the word dinosaur hadn't even been created yet. So this was long before people even knew what dinosaurs were. She was the woman who actually started the science of paleontology, which is the science of studying fossils and prehistoric animals. So when we say she was the first paleontologist, it's absolutely true. So Mary Anning is the little girl, and she grew up in England on the coast, and she would find fossils and unique shells and things along the coastline to sell to tourists. And so she was always on the coast looking for unique things, digging around, definitely doing things that your typical English young lady would not do. She was okay with that. So one day she stumbled upon an eye socket, a very big eye socket that was looking back at her. And so very carefully, her and her brother and some friends from the village slowly started moving the dirt away and trying to figure out what this was. And they ended up finding the head of an animal. Obviously the head of the animal, there was a fossil of the head of the animal there. So you can see her finding that and taking it into the village. And so she, of course, knows there has to be a body. So she goes back, and day after day, she keeps on searching, and she finally finds the rest of the body. So she's like, was it a crocodile? Is it a fish? Is it a lizard? So she had so many questions that really just made her curious about what was going on and what this creature could absolutely be. So she puts all the pieces together to form the first dinosaur fossil ever made. Put together piece by piece. So she, of course, continued to look and dig and look for other fossils. She found tons of them. She would keep journals of notes and drawings and labels and diagrams of everything that she would find, and she would share them, of course, with the scientific community. And she wanted very much to be a part of the scientific community, but they would not let her. At this time, women were not allowed to go to college and to study things that she wanted to study. So, but she kind of did her own thing and did it anyways. She would do experiments, things she found. You can see here kind of experimenting to see, how old things were, and she would drop water on them and ink on them and anything they could find to find a reaction. So she definitely was a scientist. So at the very end, she ends up, again, finding lots of more fossils. And obviously the word of all these fossils was getting around, but her name wasn't. Her name wasn't attached to the findings, even though they were hers. But Mary knew her discoveries were important because they would help change the way people viewed the Earth's past. She basically went down in history as the very first paleontologist, and you can actually see one of her fossils hanging up in the museum over in England. So it's just a really unique story. And again, it just blew my mind that this story took place before the word dinosaur even existed. So at the very back, there are all kinds of bone bits and fossil facts that you can share with your kids. But it's just absolutely fascinating. There is an author's note in the back to learn a little bit more about Mary if you want. But I think your students will really enjoy reading about Mary. So this one, of course, is called Dinosaur Lady. Book number 3, this one's called 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗹 and the President. So, of course, when talking about Women's History Month, I had to throw in one that had to do with women's suffrage. And this book is a great story about the perseverance behind one woman to make a change for women. And that woman is 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗹, and the president, of course, is Woodrow Wilson. So Miss Alice Paul is her name. She was the one-woman show of really trying to get the word out to convince the president to pass a law to allow women to vote. So the story just goes on and on about all the different things that she did. Everything from arranging a march on DC when President Woodrow Wilson came to DC, his very first day there. She arranged a march for women's rights on that exact same day. And when he got off of the train, there was no one there to greet him because everyone was at the march and trying to figure out what this Alice girl was up to. She had floats, she had bands, there were dancers, people in robes and costumes, and everyone was there. All the women were there, of course, to help convince the new president to let women vote in the 1914 election. So, did Woodrow Wilson agree? No, he did not, even after meeting with her. So then the story kind of goes a little bit into who this Alice Paul girl is and why she feels so strongly. So there is a little back history kind of embedded into the story as well. How did she learn about women's suffrage? How did she learn about the Constitution? Kind of all of those things. So after she causes all this hullabaloo, yes, the book uses that word. She meets with the president and tries to convince him, but he is just not convinced yet. So she doesn't give up. So the book continues to show all of these things that she does. Everything from making more posters to kind of picketing outside the White House to making a train, and she put these purple ribbons, and they would ride the train, and at the different stops they would make speeches. She had women write letters and mail them to Woodrow Wilson. She would find the president in his car and again picket the area. And it got to the point where, yes, she did get arrested for being on White House property. But the president did not like that because the president knew that she was a good woman who just wanted good things for America. So he got her out of jail and again met with her again, and he said yes. So finally the day came. Whoa, the book jacket just came off. Sorry about that. The day came where the president made the speech asking Congress to pass the law, and all the women there in their yellow handkerchiefs threw them up, of course, in celebration. And in the 1920 election was when they were first allowed, and she filled out her ballot and raised her arm in victory. So again, there's a great author's note that talks a little bit more about her, but this is a great one. It's a very light story when it comes to women's suffrage, but I really like the way it shows her perseverance and that she didn't give up, and that one person really can have the power to make that kind of change. So definitely grab Miss Paul and the President for another amazing story for Women's History Month. So again, like I said at the beginning, friends, if you want other suggestions, I have an amazing blog post full of other books that you can choose to read in your classroom for Women's History Month. So make sure to go and check out that blog post. And I hope you loved our suggestions. If you want links to these, they are also in the blog post as well. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Happy Women's History Month. And we'll talk to you later. All right, friends? Thanks so much. Bye.